Hello, everyone. Welcome to Reading, Writing, and Ralph. Happy Tuesday. I hope everyone is staying dry in the storm tonight. So, tonight's episode is going to be an interesting one. So, we have Bill Winslow, who is the author of The Shining Rock Brand, and this story is about venture capitalism. So, Bill worked in the venture capitalism realm, so he will be able to give us a little bit of insight and expertise, and he also has a connection with Ralph from that realm. So we're going to get to hear a little bit about that background. So I'm going to bring on Ralph so he can give us a little bit more of an intro on tonight's author. Hello, how are you?
Hi, Grace. How are you today?
I am good. I'm staying indoors.
Yeah, if there's a storm rolling your way, you're best to stay there. Yes, I've known Bill, and it seems like I just met him, and he's a recent friend. And you know you're getting old when you realize that you're calling somebody a recent friend, but you met them 20 years ago. So
Time
it's
flies.
a long time. And I was at the tail end of my career, and I was working a lot with venture capital firms with startups which needed some retooling and some other work to get them on the road to success. So very interesting guy. It's a very interesting business, and he came away with it with a creative take on the art of venture capitalism and the ruthlessness of it. So let's bring Bill on.
Well, thanks, Ralph and Grace. It's great to be here. It does seem like only yesterday that you and I were up in some office building somewhere, worrying about a company we were trying to do an investment in. And I'm glad to see you've got a new career and an exciting area. I'm glad to see you've got a literary bent, and really appreciate you and the Zebra and making this time available for me. When I guess I was reading my sunburned copy of the Zebra, and a few months ago, and I saw your picture in there, I said, "Boy, it's good to see Ralph is doing this." And and I had a book, and I said, "Well, God, this is meant to be." So I'm glad I got in touch with you.
I am too, and it's been a long time, and I think we first met. It might have been with Magic Soft.
That's right.
And it was over, and they had offices off of 28, way down towards 66.
Out in what they call not Fairfax City, but they still call it Fairfax. It's a amorphous area out there, but a lot of interesting things going on.
Yeah, they went through some changes, and we finally sold the software off years later, but it was great to have met you then. It's good to see you. And I tell you, I want you to let the viewers know about you. So tell them a little bit about your background, what you've done. We know you're a lawyer, and everybody always wants to be around lawyers. But I spent my entire career around lawyers.
First time I've ever heard that.
So tell them about yourself, who Bill Winslow is.
I was born in Tarboro, North Carolina, which is a small town in the eastern part of the state. I grew up there. I come from a farm family. Although we lived in town, we had a lot of involvement in agriculture down in Tarboro. I went to college in Massachusetts. I got a master's degree in American Studies. And then I decided to go to law school at the University of North Carolina. I graduated, came up to the DC area, and began working as a corporate lawyer, first in a law firm, then on my own, and still later as in-house counsel for a consulting company. And I was able, even when I went in-house, to continue working with some of my clients, including some of the venture clients. And I think that may have been when we crossed paths. And it was great to work with you and your colleagues throughout my career. But I retired from the company I was working with in Alexandria 2.5 years ago, just in time for COVID. So I've been hunkered down ever since.
And how did you go down this literary path? So when you woke up, you said, "I want to write a book about venture capitalism." When did that strike you, and how did you come up with this creative story?
Yeah,
It's
well, I knew I wanted to write. I always knew I wanted to write a book. I didn't exactly know what I wanted to write about. I've been writing for about as long as I can remember. When I was in the fourth grade, I wrote a short, very short story called Helicopter Mike. That was my first foray into technological fantasy. And as I recall, it was about a boy who had a beanie with a propeller on the top of it, which enabled him to fly around the neighborhood and beyond. It was a really good story. When I was in college, I wrote a story called Loomings, which was a little more ambitious. It was about rock bands that I had been in or been around. I've been playing guitar for about as long as I've been writing. And so when I was in college, I wrote about some of my experiences in that world. And I was lucky enough to have that published at a literary magazine called the Davidson Miscellany, which was then being published at Davidson College. Later, when I was in graduate school, I had an academic article about Southern literature published in a little journal. And then after that, I read another story called The Square Piano, which was about music, not about rock music, but about sort of a kind of piano that is no longer used anymore. And that story, although some people liked it, it never got published. But I still, kept on writing. I don't know exactly what attracts me to being a writer. It's hard work, but I've always, been a guy in a room trying to write a sentence that pops. I like to read things that have rhythm and rhetorical energy, and a sentence that has meaning, and maybe a twist on the meaning that gives you a little surprise. And the kind of words that draw you forward and make things fresh. That's really the essence of writing for me, and frankly, that's the eros of literature.
Yeah.
So along that line, I've always taken notes about things that happen to me or that I see, things I find interesting, events, thoughts, things I'd hear people say. And so, I would put them in notebooks. And gradually I decided I needed to organize some of this material. And I evolved from notebooks to the computer, and I set up a file called plot, a file called setting, another file called character, and a fourth one called language. And I would just try to put the material in the right file. Sometimes it would overlap. One file would overlap with another. But ultimately I had a good little collection of experiences from my life, or things I thought about, or things I'd heard. And Flannery O'Connor has a collection of short stories called Everything That Rises Must Converge. And that's kind of what happened. All my little notes sort of converged, and with a lot of writing and rewriting, that's how this book came out.
Yeah, I always like to say that the world is a stage, and there's a story everywhere you look. And so I'm sure that based upon the business you were in, venture capital for the most part, or been around venture capitalists, let me say, and they're notoriously ruthless, right? They want to make money on every deal, which is an impossibility, and that a lot of what you did experience helped you create this story. So why don't you give the viewers a little peek of the plot?
All right. Yeah, happy to do
without giving too much away.
Yeah. The story begins at a. I'm just actually going through here. I mean, the book is pretty crowded. I mean, there are a lot of characters, there are a lot of storylines, and there are, a lot of ways into the book. But it's called The Shining Rock Grand, and maybe the best way to get into it is to just walk in the front door. Shining Rock comes to mean a lot of different things in the book, some of which I'm still discovering. But in the first instance, the Shining Rock Grand is the name of a fictional resort and casino located in the mountains of Western North Carolina. And one of my main characters is a venture capitalist named Jude Roper. And just as an aside, a lot of my characters have the names of small towns in North Carolina. So Roper is a little town in North Carolina. Jude Roper has been out visiting a startup company, something you probably did a lot of your career, Ralph.
Yeah, I know.
And it's been a particularly taxing day for him, trying to whip some recalcitrant clients into shape. And so he decides he's going to take the evening off after his business meeting and go to play blackjack at the Shining Rock Grand. It's a casino where he's well known, and the staff there is very accepting of him and receptive when he comes in. And as he comes on the property, he reflects on the differences between the business he is in and gambling at a casino. And I'll read from it. At the Coffer Club, the lunch crowd had kidded Roper about taking a busman's holiday, a comment he always found amusing. What he thought about pointing out to them, and would have had he not been managing director of the largest fun complex in the Southeast, was that at the casino you at least had some control of the situation. The house was fair. The odds were predictable. By and large, one's skills were rewarded. You had no reservations deploying your own cash. Early stage investing, now that was gambling. Between the geeks, the flakes, and the lawyers, Roper had never understood why anyone who wasn't receiving a fixed fee and a hefty chunk of the carry would get involved in venture capital at all. So it is really a risky business. As you say, they're all trying to make money. On the other hand, they all realize that only a small percentage of their investments are going to make any money at all, and they're just hoping for a couple of home runs so that they can return a profit to their investors based on their big hits.
Yeah. So who's the house? Is the house the venture capital, or is the house the client?
The house is the casino. So when he says that, the house was fair. Yeah. That just speaks to the reputation of the Shining Rock Grand. It's a classy casino.
Mm-hmm.
They're fair. They're not out to cheat anybody.
But the house always wins.
The house provides enough return to the players so that the players will keep coming back. But the house has to stay in business too. So they're going to win. Some will win more than others. But one of the ways they make sure they win is to be careful not to allow folks who may be playing a system or in some other way trying to corrupt the games to come in and gain an unfair advantage. And that's just what happens here. When Roper gets to the blackjack table, he soon finds that one of the players is winning, and winning big. And this young man, the player, is doing so well that the casino suspects he may have some sort of unfair advantage. And so they ask him to cash in his chips. Later, Roper encounters the young man outside and learns that he is Kay Petaway. This is a person who's known to Kay because Kay has already begun to make a name for himself in the fledgling psychic technology space. And he's got it gives him an unfair advantage at blackjack because he can actually, with his remote view capabilities, again, this is a book set into the mid 21st century, and it is a work of fiction and to some extent fantasy. But Kay should not be allowed in a casino because he has an advantage due to his powers. Now, Kay is viewed as a sort of golden boy in the industry, but for all that, his company is not doing too well. His company is called Mind's Eye Corp. And the company is running on fumes. They're out of cash. And that's why he's come to the casino in the first place, to try to win enough money to make payroll for another 2 weeks. And that's the story I heard. I had friends who were in Atlantic City, lawyers, and they encountered people who were trying to make payroll, trying to win it at the tables. So the Roper is so impressed with Kay, even though Kay has some rough edges, that he ultimately decides to invest in Mind's Eye. But it turns out Roper has other things in mind than for Kay's company to be just another portfolio company. He's recruiting Kay and several other characters in the book in a quest for resources. And without spoiling it too much, so one of these resources is uranium. And he's also, Roper is trying to gain some global influence. And he's part actually of a conspiracy that's been going on for 500 years. And each of the people that Roper is trying to recruit has skills and connections that can help him. But in other ways, they are profoundly unsuited for the tasks he has in mind. And it doesn't help Roper when, seemingly having suffered a mental breakdown, Kay suddenly drops off the map and is nowhere to be found.
Yeah, the story it's full of twists, and I'm gonna pause you for 1 second so we can get the audience involved with the first trivia question. So, winners get. I mean, there's one winner for each question. So let's see if we'll get a copy of Shining Rock Grand with Bill Winslow's autograph. The first question is, and we're going to try not to make them too tough, but this may be on the tougher side. What city gets the most venture capital funding? So which city has the most companies, in other words, that get the most venture capital funding? So which city gets the most venture capital funding? Bill, you probably know the answer to that, so don't answer it. You're right. The book is loaded with lots of characters, and so some of the other characters that I thought were interesting were Dr. Phillips. Why don't you talk about him for a bit?
Dr. Phillips is one of a couple of doctors who work at a company called Indo-Eurotech. And he works for a man whose name is David Pactolus. Pactolus is another person who gets enlisted to work with Roper. He is a physician and a scientist who has the ability to help Roper in his quest for uranium. But he begins to wonder if this is a mission that he really should be participating in. Here's a passage where Pactolus wrestles with the question of should he be involved in this at all. Just before noon, Pactolus, he's out searching with his instruments. Just before noon, Pactolus came to the trail spur where he had a light lunch and tried to think what he would do if he really found ore. At first, it seemed like a reasonable proposition. Create a few jobs, maybe even save the planet in the process. Today, he wasn't so sure. The more he learned, the more postmortems he read about contamination in places like Texas and Niger, the more he wondered if the whole enterprise wasn't some profoundly ill-conceived caper, just another indictment of the whole idea that there could be such a thing as human progress. Maybe Kay, or at least the vibe Kay had given off before he split, was right. So much of what existed on the material plane was illusory. It was more important to find harmony with the world, to reach equilibrium, to watch and wait for enlightenment, rather than poison the earth with man's continuous experimentation, his unending mania of doing. Let your anger abate. Avoid unprofitable thoughts. Retire from the world. Look where the opposite has brought us. Incorrect. It had to be, or else Pactolus' entire upbringing had been a fraud. What was it his father had told him after the breakdown? Just do something, even if it's wrong. Those words had saved his life. The thing was, the universe didn't sit still. Why should he? So what we find is that Roper, who has somewhat utopian goals, and in that regard, he shares an impulse with the people who originally settled America and North Carolina. He wants to bring about a better world, but he wants to do it sort of on his own terms, and he faces a lot of opposition for some of the reasons that Pactolus mentions, and because he's not listening to the concerns of the people, the people who can be hurt by some of the things he wants to do.
Wow. We have a winner.
Great.
Yes. So the correct answer was San Francisco, which might surprise some people. I think first thoughts are mostly New York, but San Francisco is the correct answer, and Cecilia Warren got the correct answer.
Cecilia Warren, another old friend. she's got you by a few decades, though, Bill. She and I go back to growing up in the Bronx. So.
Oh wow, yeah. I heard that you were from the Bronx, and how did you make it down to this area?
Well, I was with the Bronx, and early on in my career, I took a gamble and joined a startup called MCI Communications.
Oh yeah. And
then they relocated the corporate headquarters from New York City to Washington, D.C., and I remained in the D.C. area for most of the rest of my career. So that's how I ended up down there.
Does have a way of growing on you.
Yes, it does. So let me ask you this question. So let's take the characters that we talked about are few of many, but how did they evolve and change throughout your work? And
well, I think each of the characters in the book has some problems. Either some of them are depressed. Some of them have some medical conditions. Some of them have secrets and don't want them to be revealed. Part of the book is how they resolve some of these issues. It's a book, since it's a book about North Carolina, we certainly talk about basketball. And one of the characters is living in shame because in a very important college basketball game, he tried to dunk on a star player for the other team, and his shot got blocked and rejected into the crowd. And ever since then, he's been receiving death threats from alumni of the college that he was playing for. And so he's trying to rise above that, and you know, that's an example of the things that people have to deal with. And I wanted to say that my character Kay Petaway is he's based on my younger brother. My brother and I were very close in age, and my brother was a person who approached life with a lot of intensity, and who had a lot of dreams, and sometimes the world didn't really measure up to what he thought it ought to be. And sadly, Bob, my brother, passed away just before the book was completed. So this is really a way of telling his story and trying to honor him.
Yeah, I think when fiction writers especially put their works together, there's elements of people they've known along the way. In this particular case, your brother, and it's sad about his passing. But are there other folks? How much amalgamation of other characters are in your characters?
I think this is a work of fiction. And particularly a work about a technology that doesn't actually exist as far as I know, and that involves some alternative history. Most of this is original. Certainly, there are some quotes and some situations that came from real life. For example, we talk about venture capitalists having to be involved with small companies. I think maybe before the show we were saying how VCs have to have a very close relationship with the companies they invest in, because although the entrepreneurs that they invest in may be very talented scientists or innovators, and they may have lots of energy and amazing ideas, they might not have so much business experience. And so, like Kay, who comes to depend on Roper, those entrepreneurs, can use advice. In my world as a lawyer, I mean, sometimes you would find companies where you couldn't believe some of the contracts that had been signed by some of these folks, and their attitude might be, well, I can always break a contract, or my company has so little money that I'm judgment proof. So those are things you see. But I think, as you found out, there's a lot of hand holding involved, and a lot of a certain amount of discipline. I had a client who once told one of his investee companies, he said, "I'm going to be living in your pants for the next 2 years," and that's what he did. He basically kept their nose to the grindstone to try and build the company into something stronger, more professional. A venture capitalist has to be part psychiatrist, but on the flip side, you see a lot of loyalty sometimes develop between VCs and their client companies, and sometimes the companies may fail, but the VC will stick with the company. Maybe they can sell the technology to another company.
Right.
Or maybe they can find a job for the entrepreneur somewhere else.
Right. Yeah, that's you're right. I'm going to try to slip in the second question here real quick, and then I've got a couple of more questions for you. So the second question tonight, again, for autographed copy of the Shining Rock Grand. Which company is the largest venture capital in the world? So which company is the largest venture capital firm, I guess, in the country? So anyway, So we talked earlier before the show started that there's, you've got the really large venture capital firms with the really mega bucks investments, and then you've got the small venture capital firms, which are almost like seed money and get them to another point where they can be recapitalized and all that. Which of those two are, in plain English, more cutthroat?
First of all, I think in my experience, although venture capital is a cutthroat business sometimes, based on what I saw in my mind, there's always sort of a dichotomy between venture capital, where you had relatively classy people, for want of a better word, and other types of businesses where you had people who were really, vicious. And I remember I was in law school. We read a case about these people who were arguing over the boundary between their land, and there was a dispute that involved maybe a few, maybe 20 or 30 square feet, and ultimately people wound up getting killed over this. That I don't think would ever happen in venture capital. People don't argue about stock certificates the way they do about physical land. In terms of the size of the deal, it's interesting. The deals, usually the terms of the deals are almost always the same, even no matter what the size of the deal. The smallest deal usually has the same documents as the larger deals. Mm-hmm. And if the deal is really big, it means that the company has already had a fair amount of success, and so the risk is probably reduced. And they may be at that point looking to take the company public, or trying to prepare for an acquisition or something like that. The smaller deals, it's typically the entrepreneur in that situation doesn't have as much leverage. And so you'll find that the investors are often able to impose terms. But still, it's, in my experience at least, I dealt with people like you and others who were relatively civilized, and I think it's a fine industry, and it's made it's one of the things that the U.S. Had really before other countries did, and I think it really made a big impact on the economy here.
Yeah, well, it certainly helped a lot of areas grow that might not have grown as quickly or as they did. The second question I had is, what should the reader expect to walk away from this book? What are the messages that you're trying to get across to them? I know it's fiction, but everybody's got a message.
I think that first of all, I want you to be entertained, and hopefully you will be. But I guess as I was rereading it and thinking about it, I kept coming back to the concept of the shining rock, and let me just say a couple of things about that. I mean, I got the name the Shining Rock Grand from a wilderness area in North Carolina, the Shining Rock Wilderness, which is one of the most beautiful places in the world, I think. It's a very remote area, and it's a place where campers and hikers go looking for an intense experience. So that's where the name came from. But gradually, I began to see the Shining Rock meant a lot of things. The Shining Rock could be applied to uranium that some people are in the book are looking for. I talked a little bit about lighthouses. The Shining Rock is, we have these beautiful lighthouses in North Carolina, and they're made of bricks, so that's another shining rock. And there are also religious connotations to this. There are many traditions that posit a spiritual dimension, a light or a fire that suffuses existence. And we've just gotten over Pentecost, which is a time when we bear witness to the Holy Spirit that's all around. And what I think, what I was sort of, you make your own meaning out of it when you read these books. And what came to me is that, I'd written a book that where what I initially had picked up on as a colorful place name with a certain backcountry residence turned into a metaphor, and then it turned into a symbol. And so when I think about the Shining Rock and the Shining Rock Grand, I think it's about the quest to find meaning and recognition and kinship, really, with things that, like the world and other people, that otherwise may often appear opaque and alien.
Wow, very powerful. So what's next? Another novel, continuation, make this a series?
Well, I mean, there's certainly the end of the book is a lot of things get resolved, but there are also some things that don't get resolved. So it's possible that there could be another one. It was a lot of work. I'm thinking I'm just going to get my lounge act together on the guitar. If you ever need somebody to play at a cocktail party, please give me a call.
We're always looking for music here at Heritage Shores, so we may.
Yeah. And Grace, you've probably got lots of contacts there in the corporate world who needs some easy listening music. So that may be the next thing for me.
I've always heard that everyone has one novel in them, but only like 0.5% have a second.
Well, whether everybody has one novel in them, I don't know, but it is the case that the first novel often has an immense amount of material. It's got everything but the kitchen sink in it, and I think mine, although I tried to edit, I ultimately found that it's good to put a lot of stuff in there because the world is a chaotic place, and
sure is.
You might as well get that out there.
Sure is. It's getting more chaotic.
Right.
The speed of things, as you know, with technology, the speed of things is just growing exponentially, or accelerating exponentially. It's incredible.
Yeah, and that's where you wonder, you want to make the world a better place, and there's no question that the technology has made the world better, but everything comes with a cost. So we have to try and keep making sure we stay human.
Yes, we do. Well, Bill, it's been wonderful seeing you again. Now that we know where each other is, to stay in touch, and if you do write that next novel, certainly let us know, and send me. I've got your contact information, and I'll pass it along to our lifestyles committee here and see if we can get you out here as a rock and roll band.
Great, be happy to do that, and also let me know when to sign the book for the prize winners out there.
Will do. We'll get that information to you.
All right, great show. We did not have an answer for the second trivia question. We had a couple guesses, but they were not correct. So
yeah, the correct answer was Intel. Was yes. Intel Corporation. People don't expect that, but they are the largest venture capital company in the world. In 2 weeks, we will take a ride through Virginia with Rebecca Green's wonderful children's book about exploring Virginia. So I look forward to that. That will be a lot of fun. So all the parents, grandparents, uncles, aunts, join the show. It's a great read and something you might want to share with your loved ones.
Yeah, that'll be a nice change of pace from your usual guests. Tonight we had a little bit of science fiction element, which I think will be really fascinating for people who have not read the book. Lovely homage to his brother. So I think
Yes.
it's going to be a great read. If you know about venture capitalism, if you don't, regardless, I think you will get into this book. So yeah, I am excited to see you again in 2 weeks. Next week, we are meeting Alexandria's adoptable animals of the Animal Welfare League. But until then, everyone, be the
good news
in
in
someone's
someone's
life.
life.
All right. Thanks, Ralph.